to welcome you all to the roundtable of September 22nd. I understand there was an accident in the Port Authority, the roads were horrible, you all went through hell to get here, so thank you. I want to start with one of my favorite stories. It's a story that's almost hard to believe, and yet absolutely true. A little boy from Milan, Ohio, comes home from school carrying a sealed envelope. He's nervous. Teacher told him, hand this to your mother, and to your mother only. And the little boy did it. He handed the envelope to his mother. His mother carefully unsealed it, took out the note, read it, and began crying uncontrollably. "Mama, what does it say?" the little boy said. And she read it out loud to her son. "Your son is a genius," the note said. "Our school is not big enough. Our teachers not of the caliber to teach him. You must teach him yourself." And this mother dutifully went and taught her son every single day right through his teenage years. She gave it everything she could. And you know something? She must have done one hell of a job. Because the little boy from Milan, Ohio, was named Thomas Alva Edison. Obviously one of the most accomplished men in the world in the last millennium. As an old man, he began rummaging through his old papers one day. And he came to that sealed envelope that his mother read to him as a 6, 7-year-old. And he took it out. It was obviously placed in a place where no one was ever meant to find it. And he read it to himself. And here's what the note actually said. "Your son is mentally disabled. We cannot teach him. He is expelled." What Thomas Edison's mother gave him is the most valuable, incredible gift a parent can ever give a child. The most unbelievable gift a friend can give a friend, or a spouse can give a friend, a spouse can give a spouse. What this mother gave her son is the magic of believing. Feel you're worthy? You can have anything in this world. Feel you're not worthy? You can't have anything in this world. That gift of worthiness is what she gave him. And Thomas Edison is one of the greatest examples of the magic of believing, even when it was false in its original form, who ever lived. Which brings me to my first speaker, Dr. Jeff Ross. When we got on the phone, first few seconds, because he launched right into his presentation. If you could hear the internal voice in my head, here's what it was saying. "Oh, please, God, not another quack doctor with a cure for Alzheimer's." It's exactly what was going on in my head. But a few minutes later, and a few minutes after that, and a few minutes after that, I began having the magic of believing. I began believing him. Why? Perhaps it was because he was the principal investigator in over 130 Alzheimer's disease pharmaceutical trials. Every single significant Alzheimer clinical trial since 1994, our speaker has been the lead investigator. Boy, folks, that's credibility. Perhaps it was because he's been a practicing geriatric physician for over 30 years. Perhaps it was because he was voted top doctor in the field of geriatric medicine by his peers. But 30 minutes later, I went from, who is this quack, to, wow, this guy is a disruptor. This guy has something that's going to change the world, and I want to be a part of it. I can tell you now, I will be part of this, and before he's done, I can promise you, he will gift you the magic of believing. Get up here.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Lorraine, for making the introduction to a very long-term friendship that you introduced me to with Stephen. The words and the kind platitudes given to me are really not deserved, but I'm going to do my best to show you how this one miracle molecule this mammoth proportion molecule that is made by nature, that we have harnessed into a new formulation, can reduce, prevent, and delay onset of many of the world's most hated diseases. The one which Steve just talked about is the one that every human being, when given a list of 12 diseases, which one do you want to avoid most? It's not stroke, it's not kidney failure, it's not a heart attack. It's the irreversible, heretofore untreatable scourge called Alzheimer's disease. The drug that I will be talking to you about, nature's finest anti-inflammatory, devoid of any significant toxicity, has the opportunity to not only revolutionize the field of Alzheimer's like none other, but it'll also revolutionize what appears on today's front page of the New York Times. This is a picture on the bottom of Aaron Hernandez's brain. Take a look at that. Those brown spots are likely the major contributing factor to why he hanged himself and why he committed those terrible murders. He had the same poisonous protein in his brain that 100% of all my Alzheimer's victims, and there's thousands of them that I've buried, but also every one of you who knows someone that knows someone afflicted by and killed by Alzheimer's. We are soon to report in the literature that that very brown poison is the exact poison shared by Alzheimer's patients, as well as other NFL players and those who suffer from chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And what is that unifying theme? It's called inflammation. That's the underlying root cause of most of the maladies of humankind. And what we're going to talk about today is how we can fight inflammation. From Alzheimer's, which is an inflammatory disease, to diabetes, which is an inflammatory disease, to arthritis, which is an inflammatory disease, as well as all hardening of the arteries. Every one of us here are growing little plaques in our arteries. And it's not because of the cholesterol or fatty acid. It's what the body does with the cholesterol and with the fatty acid, and what the body does with some of the poisons that are made when 12-year-old Johnny's in Pop Warner football and gets his clock clean and is seeing stars. That sets the stage for cognitive loss years down the road. We want to see that stop. And with this molecule that I'll share with you, I think you'll all be excited to share that information with those who want to make a big change. We have a leadership board, we have a scientific board. Each one of these, in some way or another, will change the course of these diseases that I just mentioned in such a way, in such a safe way, in such a natural way, that it is hoped that this medication will not only be by prescription, but will soon simply be a supplement. Much like vitamin C was used to prevent scurvy back in the late 1700s, this is the super supplement of the future, devoid of the toxicities, with proven science to defend the claims that I've made and the claims that I will make, and the future publications that should come out. People always want to know what's the business proposal, so let's get this done now. We are searching for the one maverick, the one investor, or a group of investors that's willing to take a chance and put up $5 million in various tranches to allow us to finish and have a final formulation for human testing. We are ready to present to the FDA. They are ready to hear about such a miracle molecule, and for a small investment, this will make such a legacy that all of you will be proud of, yourselves, your children's grandchildren, and their grandchildren, because this will leave a lasting impression on the future of healthcare for all the world. Developed and non-industrialized nations will all benefit from having this as a supplement, because it reduces the inflammation that's in every one of our body that we can measure in a blood test. We want to see that stymied. I know this is a busy slide, but the estimated revenue, if we control 13% of the diabetic market, 16% of metabolic syndrome. What's metabolic syndrome? Those are the people you see on the street when you got off the train, or when I got off my ferry. These are people that are overweight. An overweight person has what's called metabolic syndrome. That means your insulin levels are high, your blood sugars are on the border of diabetes, you may have had hypertension. Tens of millions of Americans have metabolic syndrome. Our drug is going to be targeted for that group. Alzheimer's, if we just make an impact on 18% of the market and try to prevent it, 16% market share, that's a $29 billion with a B income. So the return on investment is huge. I've had a lot of business advisors tell me this is too good to be true. Well, the answer is there's nothing better, nothing safer than using nature's medication, which I'll get to in just a moment. So we're targeting arthritis, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, Alzheimer's. Didn't want to put in chronic traumatic encephalopathy, traumatic brain injury, but don't you think the NFL is interested? Yes. Don't you think the NCAA is interested? And most importantly, what about Johnny's mom and dad? When Johnny was told at 12 years old, you go out there, you're a strong boy, Johnny, go in there, and he gets his clock cleaned. Well, we're working on a test to measure in a simple blood test that you don't have such a poison in your brain that you just saw in Aaron Hernandez's autopsy, which was done at Boston University by Dr. Ann McKee. And after you do get head trauma, counting fingers or having a $6,000 neuropsych test doesn't guarantee you're safe to go back, does it? But we have found a poison in the brains of deceased Alzheimer patients and deceased chronic traumatic encephalopathy brains, much like Aaron Hernandez, that our molecule in animal models, both of head trauma and animal models of Alzheimer's, delays progression of such a terrible disease. So those who wish to continue playing football and boxers and soccer players, maybe they need to have this in their system. So we are working on a biological marker as well with a simple blood test. Again, people always ask, well, what's the monetization point? I only show you this not as a business person, but as someone who's asked to do that. And I don't know, unfortunately, have a pointer to work, but nonetheless, we could sell to major pharma, we can partner with major pharma. There's a royalty of 4 to 6%, and we believe pharma company already has shown interest, but at this point, we're not selling to pharma. It's too early. We want to control the destiny of this drug and the health and welfare of people that will benefit. Here's the scientific rationale. Take a look on the left. This is what's happening to all of our bodies right now. There isn't one person in this room that doesn't have a degree of pollution in their body. And that's what you see as a polluted swamp. What you see here on the left, that's the equivalent of what's happening in our blood, in our arteries, in all of our organs. We are on fire. We have an inflammation going on. It's silent until you get the heart attack. It's silent until your joints start taking. It's silent until your kidneys fail. It's silent until you get a transient ischemic attack. It's silent until you get the multiple sclerosis. It's silent until you get cancer. It's all driven to some degree by inflammation. It doesn't have to be pain. When you get a splinter and it turns red and festers, that's inflammation, that's pain. But the type of inflammation outside of painful inflammation is silent. And it robs you of your dignity, your quality of life, and I end up treating them as a geriatrician when it's too late, when they've had their heart attack, when their legs are swollen, when their kidneys are failing, when their mind is failing. Let's delay the onset of that by 5 or 10 or 15 years. That's what medicine is not doing. Medicine doesn't prepare, it can't even repair. It's time to be proactive now. And that's what this drug does. This drug can restore it to a healthy balance. It's called CogWellin. Why? Because in 2015, an article came out of the Gladstone Institute, where many Nobel Prize scientists have been given such accolades. And they found an old drug that was made in 1907 in Germany by Boehringer and Sons, which now, as you may know, is one of the largest privately held pharmaceutical companies called Boehringer Ingelheim. Still in Germany, they had an idea. They said, you know, in 1899, well before your time, there was a very novel chemical made by a Felix Hauptmann, also in Germany, working for Bayer, which we say in America, Bayer. And what does Bayer make? Anybody? Yell it out.
Aspirin.
Oh, aspirin. And they had the trademark. It was theirs for 17 years. And they said, great for pain, great for rheumatism, great for arthritis. The world was introduced with great marketing to, in fact, a remedy for pain. But people were getting indigestion, stomach aches. It was Bayer's position that probably not that serious. But another company said, why don't we take a simple natural molecule from which aspirin is made. I'm going to get a tiny bit scientific. Aspirin's chemical name is acetyl salicylic acid. Take away the acetyl group for a minute. You're left with what every plant, every vegetable, every nut, every fruit, every condiment, every spice makes as a protection. It's a hormone, meaning it does a lot of good. Like insulin's a hormone, thyroid's a hormone. And you know what that hormone's called? Salicylic acid. But when you took salicylic acid as a powder in the mid-1800s, it was very caustic to the stomach. It was an acid. So Hoffman, what did he do? He acetylated it. Means he chemically modified it and turned it into aspirin. So instead of maybe 80% stomach problem, maybe it was 30%, but it was a major decline. The world fell in love with aspirin. Hundreds of millions of tons have been made. But the stomach ulcers are a problem. So Boehringer said, I got something. Here's what medicine. We just combined 2 molecules of salicylic acid. They became twins. They held together with a little bond. And Boehringer sent it to a Dr. Levy in Berlin in 1908. Said, would you test this on your rheumatism patients and compare it to aspirin? He did it. He published it. I have the article. In fact, I'm writing a book on this medicine, and it'll all be about the history and how this drug will revolutionize the world. And they found that drug didn't cause stomach upset. In 80 patients, Levy reported to Boehringer and Sons, as effective as aspirin, but doesn't have any of the side effects. But bad marketing, the drug died. Aspirin buried it. Didn't get resurrected until around the 60s or so, when Bayer finally said, yeah, I guess that was causing a little bit of stomach problem, when they started doing gastroscopes, endoscopes, seeing aspirin sitting on the surface of a crater in your stomach, bleeding. But this drug doesn't. So it got resurrected again. But it died again. Why? What do you think came out in the 60s? Ibuprofen, Motrin, the safest drug in the world. No cardiac issues, no stomach upset. Only to find out years later, causes life-threatening hemorrhages, bad for the kidneys, but good for pain, no doubt. And then, of course, we got acetaminophen, Tylenol, liver problems, lots of side effects. So the drug died to death. But in 2015, it came out from the Gladstone Institute, hey, we've tested thousands of drugs in animal models of Alzheimer's. And in 2017, they tested this drug in traumatic brain-injured mice. And they found, gee, it worked for both Alzheimer's mice and traumatic injured brains of mice. And what did they find in both? I just said that before. The same thing that contributed to the horrible life and death of Aaron Hernandez. Make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So the drug died twice and got resurrected. It's a drug that is a non-FDA approved marketed drug. You're all going to go home today and say, didn't Joel Ross say non-FDA approved but marketed? It's an oxymoron, isn't it? How could I write a prescription for a drug, have Walgreens fill it, yet the FDA said it's not an approved drug? I'll answer that question. This drug, much like a drug called colchicine for gout, another 100-year-old drug, much like a drug called guaifenesin, which is the main ingredient in Mucinex, predated the existence of the FDA. So the FDA never did auditing of the manufacturing process, the chemical processing, and the final formulation. We at CogWellin, and CogWellin stands for cognitive wellness, that's where we're starting with cognitive, but it could be ROSS for your arthritis. We have all kinds of names, trade names. And for Chris, our Greek in here, the Greek word for diabetes is diabetes, correct? So we're going to call it diabetes.
Well, you
gotten yourself, but this is the correct word.
Thank you. So we have lots of names for lots of indication for the same miracle molecule. That's the beauty of it, from nature. We have very strong intellectual property. We're not only going to take over the immediate release, we're going to manufacture, we've already manufactured a batch ready to go to final formulation, but once the FDA here's what we're doing, and we're planning to go to them, and that's some of the funding you will give to us to get the money to support an application to the FDA, what's called a pre-IND. IND means investigational new drug. We may get this FDA approval within 2 years for the immediate release. And what happens when the immediate release is FDA approved? The same thing that happened to all the colchicine and guaifenesin manufacturers. They're told cease and desist because you are now marketing a drug not FDA approved. Does that make sense? Once the FDA approves your drug, the other manufacturers of a non-approved drug are told within 60 days to cease and desist production and interstate shipment of an illegal substance. But what our intellectual property is on is the once-a-day, long-acting capsule that will stay in your body at a therapeutic sweet spot for the rest of your life. It's more important to you than a vitamin supplement because this one truly reduces inflammation. That's the beauty of this drug. So we have extremely good patent protection on it, and we're optimistic it'll do the job. This is a very busy slide, but for arthritis, this drug has been shown since the 1907 era to reduce pain and not cause any gastric upset of any consequence. Safer than every anti-inflammatory on the market. Celebrex, ibuprofen, Aleve, you name it, aspirin, Voltaren, diclofenac. Nothing better, nothing safer. The FDA has a very interesting way to get these drugs approved. It's a 505(b)(2). 505(b)(2) is how colchicine made it to the market, and the people who brought colchicine officially to the market, they sold it to Takeda Pharmaceutical for $800 million. And it's not about the money, but for investors it's always about the money and a legacy. Here you get a 2-for-1. You get a great investment opportunity and you leave a legacy that'll last well after your time has come and gone. So we're very excited. The FDA can't wait to hear about these drugs. A, because if they're really bad, they say cease and desist manufacture, get this drug off the market. It's called salsalate, like salsalate, like the dance or the dip with the late, salsalate, salsalate. And it looks like because we're attacking very needy diseases, Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injury, we think this will be very quickly fast-tracked through the regulatory processes. This is an important slide because it summarizes graphically the life and death of salsalate. Take a look in the beginning. Aspirin comes out here. Felix Hoffman synthesizes aspirin, claims it's safe on the stomach, which is a falsehood, and continued to be perpetuated for decades by the manufacturer. Then, all of a sudden, around 1907, the drug wasn't called salsalate. It was 2 molecules of salicylic acid. Remember? Salicylic acid is used as a topical for acne and for dandruff. But you can't swallow it because if you do, it's very bitter. That's why aspirin replaced the bad tasting sodium salicylate. Sodium salicylate was toxic on the stomach, more so than aspirin. So this replaced pure salicylic acid. Salicylic acid was and should have replaced aspirin. The only thing aspirin is good for, as a practicing clinician, is those who are at risk or who've had some cardiac or cerebrovascular event. Its blood thinning properties, notice, of just 81 milligram is all it's good for. But it also causes tens of thousands of life-threatening hemorrhages in your stomach. But it also saved tens of thousands of people from a fatal heart attack. You choose the poison. That make sense?
Yes.
Because if I'm not making it clear, it's my error, not yours in understanding. So salicylic acid was combined with another molecule, and they called it SSA, salicylic acid. But as I told you, totally destroyed by the great marketing and presence of aspirin that already was here in 1899. And then around the mid-90s, you started to get Celebrex, Aleve, Voltaren, Mobic, and aspirin was still used. But I started using salicylate when I got my medical degree in 1981 from a rheumatologist that said, I don't know about these newfangled other medicines. All I know is I've been using salicylate for 30 years and I don't know who makes it anymore, but if you can find it, young man, you go and use it. Okay, this guy seems to know what he's doing. Great doctor from Brooklyn, that's where I got my degree at Downstate. And so it died again, died here. And then we strongly expect right now to get a resurgence of salicylate with documentation that it's safer and as effective as aspirin and all the other anti-inflammatories. And that's what we're looking to get the funding, to get it to the market and revolutionize healthcare. How safe is it? I'll show you the safety data. Because the FDA cares about one thing and one thing only. Is it safe for the public? The history of the FDA is very interesting. It came into existence because there was a time where the first antibiotic that was ever given, it wasn't penicillin, it was a sulfur drug. It was called sulfanilamide. Sulfanilamide had a bitter taste, but it helped cure people of pneumonia and various other bacterial diseases. But it had a very bitter taste, and when they wanted to give it to children with ear infection, tonsillitis, scarlet fever, the children couldn't swallow it, they spit it out. So, what do you think the manufacturer did? A spoonful of sugar helps the
medicine
go down. Then the politicians, some of them who had their children probably killed from this mixture, said, let's take action. You know, you have to have like a politician's relative get something before they do anything, it seems. But nonetheless, so the FDA came into existence. So it goes with this one word, safety. How safe is salicylate? There you go. This is a list of the safest on the top to the most toxic non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug in the world. This was a study done by Professor Kim Rainsford. He has written 25 textbooks on anti-inflammatories. It is with he that I'm meeting Monday morning in the Royal Society of Medicine because he asked, Joel, let's write a book. Let's bring back this drug. He is a man of many years and great wisdom. He said, your idea is fabulous. Let's write that book. Fly out to see me for a week. Let's work on it. Let's let the world know about this. Again, look what's on the top. Can anybody read what's the safest drug? Say it out loud if you can read it. No, what's above that? Oh! The lower the number on the right means the safest profile overall, all safety profile regarding the stomach, gastrointestinal toxicity of 12 known non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Aspirin, Aleve, look at that. CogWellin, almost 50% safer than ibuprofen, and aspirin, and Solindac, and diclofenac, and naproxen, and Tolmetin, you name it, ours is safer. Is that fairly clear? Good. How about this, if that doesn't blow you away? A head-to-head. Group of people took aspirin, group of people took salicylate. What you see here on the bottom is 3 weeks of studying 2 groups of people, one group that got aspirin, one group that got the CogWellin drug, salicylate. And what you see in the orange here is the amount of gastrointestinal blood loss. 5 milliliters equals 1 teaspoon, okay? 1 teaspoon. So, when you take aspirin, this is aspirin, okay? Within 1 week, you're losing 10 milliliters of blood every day, okay? This was an irrefutable study. You could not take away the scientific merit. It could not be. There was no editorialist defending asthma that says it was done and structured poorly because Everyone started on a placebo, both groups for a week, and they checked to see any blood loss. No, no, no. And then week 1, all of a sudden the aspirin people are bleeding, bleeding, bleeding. And look, no different on my drug. There is no drug in the world that's approved for arthritis that's an anti-inflammatory of the non-steroidal type that can do that. And this has been known all the way back to 1907. It's unconscionable that this drug has not resurfaced till now. And it took one little article in Nature Medicine, September 1st, 2015, working on little old mice with Alzheimer's, and they tested tons of drugs, and the only one that helped these poor mice remember how to find their way out of a maze and stop the shrinkage of their brain and get rid of the bad poisons was salicylate. But they were not physicians, they were PhDs, and they never used that drug for patients, but I did. So fortune favors the prepared mind. Oh, I guess my mind was ready, but I had to wait till 2015. That's the last slide, the safety slide.